Hey there, my name is Pravus, and welcome to more Hearts of Iron 4 Vanilla this time, because we are going for another achievement campaign today. I've been trying to think about what nation I want to play for this series. There are only a handful of majors that so far I have not yet played on the channel, at least on Vanilla. And one of the big ones is the good old US of A. I know it's a little bit weird that as an American I haven't played the US on Vanilla. In fact, I've never played them in Vanilla on the channel or not. And the reason I've avoided them up to this point is because they're extremely overpowered in the late game, but getting to that point is a little bit of a slog, sitting back and just kind of building up scaling until you're ready to finally enter the fight on the side of the Allies. But if we're willing to abandon certain democratic principles, or at least twist them in a direction more favorable to me and to war, then we can actually kind of ramp up a bit faster as the US, and that's what we're gonna do today, in a very distinctly left-leaning direction. So let's go ahead and jump into this. Now, I will be playing in Iron Man mode, of course, because this is an achievement hunt, and I'm playing with historical AI focuses. I know my camera is kind of like stopping you from seeing that, but that's on right now. Now, what achievements can you get as the United States? There's actually a few of them, such as nuking Paris. You know, that's a thing. Or maybe building 375 military factories and staying democratic. Ouch. That's insane. But the couple of specific ones I want to get are Georgia on my mind, which requires we own the state of Georgia, the country of Georgia, which belongs to the Soviets at the beginning of the game, and South Georgia, which is controlled by the United Kingdom. Do that, and we get an achievement. Okay, but that's going to put me at odds with the Allies and Comintern, so let's be aware of that. Second, I would like to go for a Civil War-based achievement. There's actually two Civil War achievements. You can either win as the South, or you can beat the South. We'll be beating the South today, but that's a couple of different things you can do. I mean, you could go for a fascist solution and take Georgia on my mind, but we're gonna be going down the communist route and seeing what we can accomplish. This should be a lot of fun. Let's go ahead and jump into Iron Man, United States. And here we are. Now, the United States is a very large country, but it's not very strong at the very beginning of the game. In fact, there are certain cheese strategies out there to try and take out the United States before they have a chance to ramp up and therefore become ridiculously powerful if you can. So in the beginning of the game, we're gonna be weak, mainly due to a couple of different things. One, we have the Great Depression. Lots of nastiness coming out of this. 30% consumer goods factories is so painful. Not to mention it's costing me a whole political power every day. That's huge, extremely penalizing, and a few other things that are gonna be very painful. We need to get out of this, like as fast as we can. We also are going to have a couple of economic laws and military laws that we don't like. Disarmed nation, for example, greatly reduces my recruitable population. We also have undisturbed isolation. This is one of the single most punishing things in the game. 50% consumer goods factories, and you're really slow at building everything else. It's terrible. We want to get out of this, like as fast as we can. But to do that, we need to be going to war. And this is where deliberately triggering the Second American Civil War can actually be pretty helpful, because all of a sudden, you're not undisturbed anymore. In fact, you're feeling pretty darn disturbed. Now, as I said, there's a couple different ways you can do this. You could wait until the elections, right? Pick up a right-leaning Republican leader, go down the gold standard, and maybe go ahead and ally with the silver shirts and kind of reform the Confederacy if you want. That would trigger civil war. Or alternatively, we continue the New Deal with FDR, suspend the prosecution, and then start representing the unions and going for things like democratic socialism and more interactions with the USSR, eventually also triggering another civil war. This is the route that I have chosen for this particular run. So we want to continue with the New Deal. Faster we can get this going, the better. Also, we get 150 political power, which is like a whole nother advisor, like let's say a silent workhorse. I mean, we desperately need political power at the beginning of the game. We also start with 4 research slots. Now, because I know that I am going to be going for a civil war at the beginning of the game, going for militaristic technology is dangerous because it can give my enemies the same advantage. So the more we avoid that at the beginning of the game, probably the better. I still think it's worth maybe picking up some fighter technology and other stuff that I don't think the AI is going to prioritize. But anything along the lines of, let's say, more infantry defense or better support companies and stuff, that could be a bit of a risk, so I'm going to try to avoid that as much as I can. We do have a lot of civilian factories, but look how many are taken up on consumer goods, so building things up is going to be a little bit on the difficult side. We could try building up some infrastructure to try and get some extra resources, since right now we know that building up things like factories is going to take forever. And this might have been better back in the day when you could build up a lot more infrastructure and it had a much more noticeable impact on the construction speed of your factories. To an extent, I still think it's worth doing at least a little bit of this. We can get some extra steel, some oil, some aluminum, etc. But after that, I think we just go ahead and swap over to getting a handful more of these civilian factories, mainly in New England. If we're gonna deliberately trigger a second civil war, don't build factories in the South unless we need to make certain people like us and get some lobbying efforts finished. Otherwise, we're only going to make the CSA a little bit stronger. As far as my factories, the carrier fighters makes 0 sense, so we'll go ahead and swap that over to close air support for now. We'll get fighters and stuff later. A couple more factories on towed artillery and infantry equipment would probably make the most sense. I guess I can go for 5 on towed artillery for now, build up a good stockpile, and then we'll swap more of that over into infantry equipment. That should be fine. Now, as we start getting some political power and stuff, we're going to want to go for some lobbying efforts. At the moment, we can't even do this because I only have 0.15 political power per day. It's so stinking bad. So we can't even do the lobbying efforts. I have to actually build up a small stockpile of it first, then we can do this. But we need to, because you can see here, there's a special mechanic for the United States involving Congress. A lot of our national focuses and acts are stuck behind support in the Senate and in the House. So we're going to have to be constantly trying to woo these guys over to my side using what little political power that we've got, and it sure as heck ain't much. Let's go ahead and move all of my troops back over this direction. By the way, I am planning on trying to get these guys to train up at some point. We should also consider maybe grabbing all of my planes, of which we have at least a handful at the beginning of the game. We'll get them all up over this direction, for example. And I want to get pretty much my entire navy, all of them, and see if we can just get them into one big super navy. I guess I could just like manually select all of them. We're going to ultimately want to have a West Coast and an East Coast navy, but it's not that important at the beginning of the game if we're triggering the Civil War because all of our enemies are going to be in the South. So we want to have our navy over here as much as possible, get them all together, make sure we dominate the seas, and have the air superiority when the Civil War begins. But it's going to be at least a year or two before I'm able to kind of antagonize people enough to make that work. So let's sit here for a little bit, and we're going to finish continuing the New Deal. Now, every once in a while we get some really fun events, like the opposition suffering a defeat in the Senate. Somewhat random that happens. That was actually pretty darn fortuitous. I do love seeing some of that. Oh, let's see. I need at least 10 political power before I can do some lobbying efforts. We'll take care of that in a little bit. Any other focuses and stuff down here we can worry about? Nothing yet. Nation building in the Philippines. We do technically have a subject state in the Philippines. That may not last for very long. We will see. Wow, okay. We just lost 40 representatives. That's going to hurt quite a bit. But anyway, we may not keep the Philippines long term. Remember that the Japanese eventually do attack the Philippines, and that's a way of dragging me into a war. We might want to do that and see if we can take out Japan early on, or we might want to abandon that. I'm going to play that one by ear. We'll kind of see. New Deal should be finishing in just a few seconds, if we can wait. I am getting all my troops together so we can start training these guys and just farming out a little bit of army experience so I can have a better template than what I do have right now. We'll come back to a lot of that later. The Rhineland is getting remilitarized, not really surprising. The next thing I want to do is go for WPA, which gets me a bit more of that delicious political power. So let's go ahead and pick some of that up. And the reason I want to do this right now is because the faster we can go to the Agricultural Adjustment Act, the more I can start to reduce the impact of the Great Depression and move on into a slow recovery. Also, we'll unlock a decision to pay farm subsidies, which can get you more support in the government. This is the first thing I need to do. We're not ready to go for a civil war when I'm this weak. We have to get our economy up and running at least a bit. Let's go ahead and pick up that silent workhorse. Now I'm making 0.45 political power per day, which means I can go to the decisions and we can start doing a small lobbying effort. This costs me most of that political power gain per day, so we're not going to be stocking up very much and reforming our government for a while. But what it does is flip 5 more senators and 25 more representatives to your side every month when you do this. You have to be basically doing this like every time you have the opportunity. It's the best way to make sure that you stay on top of Congress, even though you know you're missing out on a lot of those sweet, sweet reforms. Now, one great thing is playing as the United States is we actually have a pretty substantial amount of oil being produced down here in Texas. 614 here alone, another 100 up here. It just keeps going. This is pretty great because it means we're going to have a lot more fuel than most nations would have at this state of the game. In fact, we're probably one of the greatest oil producers ever to exist. Awesome. What this means is we have enough fuel that I actually can afford to start drilling my Navy and what Air Force I've got kind of early on and start farming out a little bit extra Navy and air experience on top of this Army experience. It's pretty great. There's the Second London Naval Treaty, don't care about that. You know something I just realized? If I'm playing as America, right? America! And I am an American, then the best thing to do is to put on my handy shades. Yeah, now an American. Senators vote for government proposal. Sweet, I get a little bit of extra support. The Senate loves me! Oh, and as representative speaks, the House loves me! This is fantastic, continue the lobbying efforts! Lobbying is the greatest system ever invented, I'm confident of it. WPA, very different thing, is complete, which means now we can go for that Agricultural Adjustment Act. There's also a research slot available early on, which is very tempting, but I don't need it at this stage of the game. Also, right now I have enough support in the Senate and the House to do this, so we have to. This doesn't require support. So this is always something I can circle back around to if I find myself in a situation where I am not getting enough support in the Senate and the House. God forbid, but it could happen. Now that I got 170 political power, you might think I want to change up my laws, but I can't because we are still undisturbed. Instead, what I am going to do, I cannot get, hang on, wait. Am I unable to hire, oh, I can't do the Communist Revolutionary yet. Never mind, we're gonna hold on to this political power, finish the Agricultural Adjustment Act, and then once it's done, we go for suspend the persecution, which will allow us to start getting some communism support, which is the most reliable way to swap to a totally new ideology as the United States. And y'all, do you like my shades? Is that it?
Yes.
You like the shades? Okay. She wasn't expecting that. Hi, Kim Kim! Hi, Kim Kim! Oh, my good boy! Oh, look at you, little corgi buddy! I'm gonna be a communist! Isn't that sweet? Oh, you're such a sweet babushka! Oh, sorry, babushka. I've got fighters now. All right, so we have them fighters and some construction tech, which does help at least a bit. Again, I mostly still want to focus on things that are not going to be helping the enemy, so let's go for stuff like the radio, perchance. Or we could go for some early resource gain and stuff. Again, not focusing on the fun things like the guns. I don't want to give the Confederates any extra bonuses. We can always research that on our own, and I'm pretty sure we'll have more research slots than them. There's the Agricultural Adjustment Act done. All right, so now we get a little bit more factories to work with. Not a lot, but we're up to 35 cities working for us right now. That's not terrible. Let's go for suspend the persecution. Stop persecuting my people! A bunch of racists in the United States. Ridiculous. We gotta stop that. I'm gonna go for egalitarianism. In fact, I'm gonna go for extreme egalitarianism. That's what I'm gonna do. By the way, we did manage to get our first round of doctrine already. We could go for some upgrades to things like naval academies and stuff if we want to. It's one of the bonuses of getting some of this extra experience early on. I'll be honest, I have no idea what here is even good. I don't know if I've ever tried this. Huh. Aviation enthusiast. That sounds kind of fun. But instead, I think I'm gonna go for signals training. Why not? When my admirals level up, which they may never, but if they do, they might get some extra maneuver and stuff. More representatives in favor? Man, I'm getting lucky in Congress right now. This is amazing. Boop-a-doop-boop-boo. This is why I don't want to play the United States. It's slow, it's boring, and it's slow. All right, we're suspending the persecution. That's gonna be done, thank you. Now we can hire our communist revolutionary man. See, and that's why you're supposed to persecute. If you don't want to become a communist, then you gotta persecute people. We all know this. Slippery slope fallacy and all that. All right, let's go for reaching out to the Where group. What this is gonna do is give us a whole bunch of new advisors, some of which are actually gonna be pretty good. Including Whitaker Chambers for political power and stability early on. That's not too bad. Mostly, though, this is going to start leading down toward the group of USSR economic cooperation, which allows us to kind of have some extra bonuses with each other. I don't remember exactly how it works. I'm pretty sure we can just like maybe do some extra like decisions and kind of boost each other's economy up a little bit if we want to. We'll find out in a little bit. The good news is our Great Depression modifier has been reduced. You can see that we're now getting an extra 0.35 political power per day, and we've saved ourselves 5% consumer goods and so on. So all of that is looking a lot better. Election of 1936. Now, we do need to stick with the Democrats in order to go for the communist route. This is where you would swap over to the Republicans if you want to be going for the gold standard. What would you do in the meantime while you're waiting for the gold standard? I don't know, start building the Pentagon or something. Become a military powerhouse. That's up to you. Anyway, Democrats are in power once again. Huzzah! We get New Deal for more stability, and our infrastructure would build up faster, if I cared about such things right now. And now that we have 10 army experience, we should be able to swap out at least a couple of artillery divisions. Not that a 7-2 is particularly good, I'll add on more to this later if I can, but at least we can go ahead and start getting some basic infantry and artillery divisions up and a-running. I'm not going to train any of these right now, but we want to have lots of equipment on hand, especially in the artillery department, to get these built up, because that is going to be our best way to shred through the Confederates. Now, one thing that did just happen as the United States is I got a little pop-up where a senator offered support to me if I am to do something, for them. Namely, building a munitions plant in North Carolina. If we do this, we get a lot of people on our side. If we don't, we get a lot of people against us. I will go ahead and start doing this. Now, yes, this does mean building out another factory in territory that doesn't particularly love me. And that will end up helping the CSA, but it gets me a lot more support to continue doing whatever I want to do, so I'm going to go ahead and say that's probably worth it. And yes, by the way, I'm even investing in some naval-related technologies. Again, anything that doesn't help the CSA, radio, basic electronics, anything industrial, doesn't even matter. We're just going to keep working on all of that. We have reached out to the WHERE group. Let's get that USSR economic development. And once we do that, we now have a couple of different options. We will be able to either go for the Unholy Alliance, which would allow us to join up with the USSR, and we'll end up doing this, but I'll explain more about why later. Alternatively, if Communist China is a part of a faction, then we would be able to join up with them instead. So it really comes down to whether we would want to join the USSR or with China. You might be inclined to think that I would want to go for China instead of the USSR, because we want to conquer Georgia for Georgia on my mind. You might think that, but you would be wrong, because there are other things that we can do with the USSR if we are also on their side. It's kind of crazy, but it works. Yes, by the way, I'm just going to continue working down base strike for my naval doctrines. I never use it. Trade interdiction with the subs has pretty much always been best. But you know what? I'm starting as the United States with one of the largest and most powerful navies in the game that pretty much can carry me to victory for most of the game as long as I don't mess up. We've got lots of carriers. We might as well make good use of them, right? I think so. I just realized that I can take Whittaker Chambers for free. Same with Harry White and Victor Perlow. I didn't even notice those were free. They're actually free. What? Well, that's pretty freaking awesome. Okay, nice. So we have free people I can just swap around as much as I need to. Dude, I like having a flexible cabinet. That's awesome. Well, now the question remains, do I spend political power trying to boost up my government in any way, or do I hold on to this, wondering if I'm going to be able to get enough political power to upgrade my economy before the Civil War ends up beginning? And that should not be an issue. We've got at least another year or so before we're going to be going for a civil war. So I think we got time. We might as well boost up something. Could go for the naval doctrine, believe it or not, just so we can make it cheaper. But I'm going to go for maybe, well, you know what? Instead of going for a theorist, what if I go for someone who actually passively gets me some more experience this way? I think that would be better. Let's go for Eisenhower, Dwight D. Eisenhower for the passive experience gain, plus a little bit of beautiful attack damage. That'll be very helpful when we fight against the South once again. The new munitions plant in North Carolina should be built, which means we have completed this, and look at all the support I've got in Congress. The people love me. It's outstanding. We'll go ahead and toss that back onto some artillery because we know we are going to need a lot of it. I am certainly hurting for equipment pretty much across the board, and that is going to be the case for these United States. I'm also losing a lot of planes and not getting a lot out of it. All right, you know, it was fun training with these guys while I could, but now I'm starting to think that training with my planes was a mistake. At least they're all regulars, so even though I don't have a ton of planes to work with, I should be able to do some pretty good stuff. All right, let's go for the Union Representation Act. This will move us closer to a civil war. As soon as you do this, You are now officially on track to the Civil War. You could pick up this one, and there will be a follow-on event where we could de-escalate things and stop there, but I'm not going to. We're going to continue working down all this. I now need to get to guarantee the American dream as fast as possible. Why? Because as the United States, when the Civil War begins on the side of the communists, the Midwest is going to basically try to secede and stay out of it. They just want to be independent. And I think if we win the war, they'll rejoin me. But if I can guarantee the American dream before the Civil War begins, these guys never leave. They remain a part of the US, which means I keep that oh so critical military infrastructure. I need these guys. So now everything that I am doing comes down to getting the guarantee, the American dream. That means I go for union representation, then I go for the old age, then I go for accumulated wealth, and then I go for this. Boom. 8 senators just went into opposition. Well, we call that a little unfortunate, but have some lobbyists. The Spanish Civil War appears to be having a bit of fun. Ooh, the nationalists are actually doing pretty well, but the anarchists have arrived, so I don't know. We'll see how all that turns out. Not too worried. The Axis is probably going to be pretty powerful because remember, as the United States, if we do not join the Allies in their fight against the Germans, they're kind of toasted. I mean, it's very difficult for the UK, pretty much alone in historical focus, to take on the entirety of the German Reich in the long term. That's just not going to work out well for them. So, tough beans. But, you know, if you give me South Georgia, I might just consider helping you out. Might. No guarantee. And I should also say I'm pretty renowned for going against my word and maybe backstabbing my allies, but don't take that too seriously. There we go. All right, the Silver Legion protests. Led and organized by the Silver Legion of America, a number of centrist and right-wing organizations today marched through the Capitol in one of the largest demonstrations Washington has seen so far. Other gatherings have been reported all across the country. The march ended in front of the Capitol where the crowd demanded that the communists in Congress assemble were delivered to them to stand trial before a people's grand jury for treason. Privately, some members of the administration share some of the protesters' more legitimate concerns about the rule of law and adherence to constitutional checks and balances. Others, however, suggest a hard line against them. So we can avoid escalating, and this prevents the Civil War from firing off for a little bit, at least until we make things worse. But I ain't doing that. I'm not bowing to the mob. Ridiculous. So we're going to go ahead and have the protests escalate into violence. Now, this does cost me a lot of my political power, which is now making me concerned that maybe I'm not going to have enough political power in order to go for the war economy. But we'll see. What would this do for me? Popularity of communism, aha. This would go for slow economic growth, which improves my political power gain a lot. This would help make me feel significantly better. So let's go ahead and work on this one first. Let's see, what is this? Oh, okay, so here's the economic cooperation. It actually is specifically useful for industrial technology sharing between the US and the Soviet Union. So I notice over here we get a 10% boost for synthetic oil technology, and that's coming out of the Soviet Union. Okay, so that's how that sucker's gonna work. I'll admit that's not the most outstanding and exciting thing that I've ever seen, but you know, occasional little technology boosters, I'll take it. We are about to successfully wealth tax people into oblivion, which is going to make a lot of people very unhappy, but communism support goes up, we go to slow economic growth, and Japan has declared war on China. Fun. Let's go for that old age pension act for some base stability. That should be nice. Notice that even though we've had all these nasty impacts from some of these very unpopular laws, we still enjoy significant amount of support across Congress. So all this lobbying is definitely working out for me so far. And now we're making 0.94 political power per day while still lobbying people at the same time. Very good. I say good. Protests are now escalating into violence and we lose a lot of stability as a result. Tensions escalated at another protest in the Capitol today as another mass protest was called by, amongst others, the Silver Legion of America. Repeating their earlier demands that a number of members of Congress be arrested and turned over to them, the protesters issued an ultimatum of 1 hour before they would storm the Capitol and remove the people on their list by force. I swear I've seen this movie before. When the ultimatum passed without reaction, small squads of Silver Legionnaires rushed the line of Capitol Police. A bloody melee developed in which quickly spread to engulf other protesters. With the police so occupied, other groups gained entrance into the buildings, going from room to room. They managed to find several of their intended victims, but were stopped from leaving by armed police. In the ensuing firefight, and this was the 1930s, so you know it was quite the old-timey firefight, several of the attackers were killed, while 2 congressmen were injured. An ugly mood has settled over the Capitol, with both sides blaming the other for the escalation. The next few weeks will show whether the incident now known as the Battle of Capitol Hill was the end of the protests, or merely the prelude to a bigger conflict. Yeah, next few weeks indeed. Please get this freaking Old Age Pension Act up and running ASAP. A little bit of extra stability would probably be kind of helpful, maybe a little bit, I don't know. What does reshuffle Congress do, by the way? Lose stability, ensure a comfortable majority. The majority will be restored in any future election if it should be lost in the meantime. What? That sounds crooked as heck. I love it. Industrialists move an arms factory. Yeah, with the political climate being an issue, some people are trying to move to a different area. We've removed a military factory from Michigan and moved it down to Florida. Yeah, the longer this goes on as we start building up to the Civil War, we're going to find that some of our industry starts leaving us for the South, which is a bit bizarre. Now soldiers are deserting as well. Yeah, that's fine. But anyway, the idea is to weaken us going into this Civil War, which is kind of what's happening right now. So, yeah, it's gonna be unpleasant. There's no way around it. It's gonna be very unpleasant, but it's okay. We're gonna figure some of this out. What other kind of equipment am I needing so far? A lot more guns? That's fine. Let's also get some support equipment, and then, yeah, keep making more infantry equipment, please, and thank you. There goes the civilian factory down to Tennessee. Ugh. An armory has been raided. Okay, they're losing some more stability. Basically what's happening is the stability is trying to tank. Things are supposed to get harder and harder and harder to deal with. Stability goes down, and once we become unstable, that means we have a civil war. So the game's trying to mess with me. But we should still have enough time to now guarantee the American dream. There goes another military arms factory. It's fine, who's worried? Everything's fine. Just keep building factories in the north, dang it. In just a few more short days, we will be able to guarantee that American dream, which guarantees the Midwest sticks with me during the Civil War. So that's gonna feel real freaking good in just a little bit. Let's see, it's about to be 1938. Is there anything else I want to research beyond what I already am? Do we start going for some military techs for once and say I really could use some advantages here? 123 days? Do we think the Civil War is gonna start in the next 123 days? Gosh, I really wish I knew exactly how long it was going to be until that happened. Maybe we sit on this for just a moment. Let's see how this goes with the whole American dream thing. I don't think this pushes us closer to the Civil War, technically speaking. There we go, that's taken care of. And now we have to decide what we'd want to do. We could go for the Militia Organization Act, which makes it faster to train up more troops, which can be nice. Or the Worker Management Act, which is going to get us factory output and eliminate the Great Depression effects completely. We get all those consumer goods back. This is effectively a 17.5% boost to our civilian factories, which is kind of massive. So we'll do that. Virginia citizens in the state form militia units that will be active when the war breaks out. Thank you, Governor of Virginia, for your treachery. Very much appreciated, yes. Very much appreciated indeed. I am trying to train up more troops so that they are ready to go when the war does begin. But now I have 3 research slots and not a lot to do with any of them because I don't know how much longer I have to wait until the Civil War breaks out. And I'm a little scared. I'm holding on to political power up here because when the war does break out, I want to be able to swap out to partial mobilization right away. Or if I successfully am able to become communist at some point soon, which will happen as we continue to get more popularity, we'll have the option to swap out a little bit. I'd love to go ahead and move over to that war economy directly, but I don't think that's going to work out for me. I think we're going to end up having to go for partial mobilization. Regardless, that's kind of huge. That's another 25% factories that'll be on my side, not to mention a 60% swing in my favor for factory construction. You can imagine that would be very, very good for me. Anyways, I do think this is a good place for us to be ending up this video. So far, proper, strong start. A pretty, textbook rushing case down toward guaranteeing the American dream, preparing for that Civil War. There's a lot more I need to do down over here. Actually, if it became a Democratic Socialist over here and get 35% support, we could actually go for Democratic Socialism, and this would actually be pretty helpful right here. We could go for communist states right there. Oh, so wait a minute. I only need to get to 35%? We're at 35%! Oh, dude! Okay, maybe when we're done with this, we just go for desegregate the armed forces, which gets me a lot of recruitable population because we're not being racist. but also we can go for democratic socialism, which means I just become communist, and I can go for that war economy while the war is still going on. All right, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If so, I would ask you to hit that like button, leave a comment, subscribe, make sure you hit that notify bell, and I will see you guys next time.